Do you actually want to go viral? And if you think you do, why is that? Hey, welcome back to Subject to Change, a podcast where we talk about social media, the ever-evolving landscape of it, just like everything that goes on. So today we're tackling the topic of going viral. You'll hear my opinions about it. I also pulled a bit of research, some recent talks that I've had with people about it. It's gonna be a bit of a few different sides to going viral. I do want to preface this with saying that I'm not the expert on going viral. I did have some videos perform quite well. I've had videos have like hundreds of thousands of views. I've even had a video, actually a few videos I think, have a few million views. But I don't think as a social media manager, when I do my work, my main goal is to go viral. I can create videos that go more towards it, but my main goal and my main strategy is never going viral, because also is going viral really a strategy? But I will also say that I'm like slightly, I'd say maybe uncomfortable putting this out, even though it is my opinion, because I guess I'm afraid, what if a future brand that I want to work with really wants to go viral? Which in that case, I mean, are they even the best fit necessarily for me? Probably the best fit for each other, I suppose, not for me. So in that sense, I don't know. I think this is not the most standard opinion people have about virality. So that's why I think I'm a bit uncomfortable talking about it. And I think there are different ways you can approach virality, and some of them I'm much more on board with than others. So we'll get into that as well a bit. So I guess what I'm saying is I am slightly worried about maybe a future brand finding this one with they being like, no, we don't want to hire her because she doesn't have our views on virality. So I'm kind of worried about that. But what gave me more courage to talk about this is a recent call that I attended with Michael, who is ex-head of Ryanair Social, and he was talking about social media strategy, and I'll get into that later on in the video. But I think first we need to even cover what different types of going viral, at least for me, mean, and then we'll have some a bit more pros and cons sides of virality, and then we can go more into all the different resources I've seen, found, people that I've talked to, and all that. So let's jump into how, like, different ways that you could go viral. So I would say one way that I'm by far the most on board with, and I do agree with that way, is just by following trends. I think there's a right way and a wrong way to approach following trends. But in essence, if we're just talking about that, I do agree that following trends is a totally valid way of trying to go viral. I think there is nothing wrong with following trends if there's a right way you go about it. Next up, one that I personally am not the biggest fan of. When you see, I think you just know what the account is trying to achieve by doing it, which is posting like a 3-second reel or a video and then putting a bunch of text in the caption so you have to read it, and then the video keeps on looping and looping, giving them a bigger watch through rate and repeated views. With that, I'm like, I get it, and I think for a while that really worked on Instagram as well. I think now they're catching on and it's not working as well, so I guess that's good to see. But with that, I'm like, I don't know, I feel like that's a bit of a not the best tactic to go about it. If you have things to say, you could just talk to the camera or do a carousel or something. That I'm not the biggest fan of, that is all I'm saying, but yeah. And then definitely in a similar vein is people having very controversial or even like rage baity takes in order to get more engagement, to get the video to go viral. I feel like that is, I don't know, if that's your actual take and you want to discuss it, sure. But especially if we're talking about brands, I don't really see how brands could have controversial enough take that this would work and it wouldn't be just a gimmick. So if we're talking in general, a brand usually tries to not really offend anybody. Obviously, a brand can have their stances and go behind them, and if that is offending somebody, that's different. But like, for example, if a brand is vegan and somebody's offended by a brand not being vegan or like not testing on animals, if we're talking beauty or stuff like that, then I feel like in that instance, you kind of don't want that customer anyways. But if it's too controversial of a take outside of your brand values, I feel like that just doesn't really work. So yeah, I'm not the biggest on that. And I don't think for individual creators, I can see how that can work. But for brands, I really don't think it's necessarily the best option, unless it's your like true brand voice. See, that's the thing, like it's always about trying to find or trying to show up on social media the way your brand is. If your brand is, you are a controversial brand that has all these crazy takes, then yes, of course it makes sense, and it's probably going to help you go viral anyways. But I would say most brands don't choose that route. So that's what I mean when I say I don't think this is generally the most applicable. And then a last one is crazy or like high stakes situations. And with those, it's just, it can work. I think this depends on how it's executed. So if we're doing, I don't know, let's say see how many orders I can pack in 5 minutes. There's stakes there. Is it truly like a viral hook? I'm not sure. But like, so I guess what I'm also trying to say is, to all this, there are ways to go about it and I think execute it well, but there are also ways to go about it and I think execute it poorly as a brand. So that's, I guess, where I'm coming from. But now that you have already kind of heard what my stance is on virality, let's take a step back and first give credit to my very hardworking assistant, ChatGPT, and see what ChatGPT says are pros and cons of going viral. I will say we did have a bit of an issue of at first trying to find credible sources, because first few iterations of pros and cons was very questionable sources, but then we agreed. So these are like Forbes has a Harvard Business Review. Okay, I will say it does have Wikipedia on it as well, which can be a very questionable source. But okay, first let's do pros of going viral. It gave me 4 pros, which is disproportionate ROI, enhanced brand visibility, emotional engagement drives sharing, and social proof and trust building. So disproportionate ROI is just because viral marketing can yield significant returns on minimal investment, especially crucial for startups with limited budget. With this, I do agree. Like, technically, if you are able to create one piece of content that gives you a lot of visibility, otherwise you might need to spend a lot more resources to have that much visibility throughout multiple pieces of content or paid media and stuff. So with that, there's nothing to disagree with. Enhanced brand visibility. Obviously, viral content can dramatically increase brand awareness, reaching audiences beyond traditional marketing channels. Again, completely fair, totally agree with that. Emotional engagement drives sharing. So content that evokes strong emotions, particularly positive ones like joy or excitement, is more likely to be shared, amplifying reach. With this, I agree partially, because I think a lot of viral content can lean more negative than positive. So if there was a way to positively go viral, I would be much more on board with that. I just don't think that's the most common way. I think it is usually more like from the negative side, because that's like what's gonna get more attention, right? And then we have social proof and trust building. So viral campaigns can leverage social proof, where widespread sharing and engagement build trust and credibility among new audiences. Again, I agree with this. However, the question is, I would question the trust building. I think a viral video can be the beginning of that, but I would say that that's just the beginning. It doesn't really that's not the moment where you start building trust. It's probably if you then go further and learn more about the brand. And then to look at some cons of going viral, oh my god, this word is really hard for me. And then some cons of going viral would be lack of targeted engagement, short-lived attention span, potential for misinterpretation, and reputational risk. So let's go through them individually. Lack of targeted engagement would be viral reach doesn't guarantee that the audience aligns with the brand's target market, potentially leading to low conversion rate. And that is, I think, one of my main things about viral videos. It's, yes, you're going to reach a lot of people, undoubtedly, and there's definitely going to be a part of those people that will probably like your brand, but the question is how many. And yeah, I don't see it as the best way, but the question is how many. Short-lived attention span. Viral fame is often fleeting. Without a strategy to retain new audiences, the surge in attention may not translate into long-term benefits. And that's the thing. I don't think the audience you get from a viral video is necessarily going to become your core customers. It can be, and I'm sure that part of them will. I'm just like, if you center your whole social media strategy around going viral, which I don't think is a strategy in itself, but let's say you do that, I'm not sure how many core customers you're going to build off it. But let's get into the next one. Potential for misinterpretation. Once content goes viral, the brand loses some control over its messaging, which can lead to misinterpretation or misuse, which I think that's, fairly reasonable, and I think that's always an issue. Even honestly, without viral content, that can be an issue, just because online I feel like a lot of people do want to misinterpret what is being said or don't watch the video fully or whatever. But yeah, reputational risks. If not managed carefully, viral content can backfire, leading to negative publicity and potential damage to the brand's reputation. I think that's very similar to potential for misinterpretation. Again, on social media, you always have a lot less control over your brand messaging than on some more conventional, on more like traditional marketing channels. So that's always a potential. It's just that when you reach such a wider audience, I think there's just a lot more room for people to misunderstand you or even like take offense to stuff. So yeah, that is what ChatGPT says is pros and cons of going viral. And then after talking about the pros and cons of going viral, I wanted to bring up a conversation I had the other day with a brand, and we were talking about their strategy, and the person I was talking to said how they wanted to have content go viral. And so my perspective, I was like in my head, but you are more minimalist, laid back, aesthetic brand. So I said, but why do you want to go viral? Because I don't think for you that feels like the most authentic, first of all, and second of all, I don't think it's the best approach, because you wouldn't be able to translate your aesthetic the best through going viral. And then the person I could tell that they thought about it for a second, and they were actually, yeah, you're right, I don't think we want to go viral. I think it's more we want to be on trend and stuff, but still make it feel like our brand. And I agree with that strategy always. You just need to think about what your brand is and how you can implement different elements of all the possible social media strategies the best way to fit you and your brand. So I was like really glad. It made me honestly feel better, because I do have that fear that a brand will tell me they want to go viral, and then I will maybe question it a little bit just because I don't feel like it's the best approach. And their response will be, no, that's the way we want to do it. Because obviously, if I get hired and you want me to execute a strategy a certain way, even though I might disagree with it, I'll still do it because it's your brand, and I can then still guide it in a way that I think might be the best. But at the end of the day, it's what the brand wants out of it, I suppose. So after that conversation, and I think it went great because it was an actual conversation of discussing why you want to go viral, I take a step back and think about, why do you want to go viral? Do you want more views? Do you want more brand awareness? Do you want a bigger reach? What is it that you want out of virality? Because I think some of those stuff can be achieved without just having the blanket statement of being like, I want to go viral. So what does virality represent to you? Because from my perspective, and I think I've mentioned it a few times now throughout the episode, is going viral is not a strategy. It's a tactic that can be implemented as a part of the strategy, but it's not a strategy in itself. Because the moment I think your strategy becomes going viral, that means that your branding, probably your values, and everything else surrounding your brand kind of has to take a little bit of a step back for virality to be the main objective. Because to go viral, you often need to do crazy stuff, have crazy statements, follow trends, which that can be definitely woven into brand more. But if your bigger objective is the virality, I'm really struggling with this word, then I don't think your brand gets to shine through as much, which is why I'm saying it can be a tactic and a part of the strategy, where you dedicate a certain amount of content that can follow more like the virality formula, where you can be okay with not fully showing who you are as a brand. But I don't think it can be all the videos, because in that instance you're losing the core messaging, I would say, often. Which I think similarly goes to trends. It makes sense to follow trends. You should jump on them early enough so it still makes sense for you as a brand. But sometimes in order to fit a trend into your branding, you kind of need to jump through hoops and loops to figure out how it can fit into your strategy. So that's what I mean. I think there should be a balance. Let's just put it that way. There should be a balance. If you want virality to be a part of your strategy, there just should still be a balance. On the other hand, I suppose, if you don't particularly care about your branding and it's all about just getting as much reach as you can and raising the brand awareness and stuff, but if you don't care about your branding, that doesn't really... I don't know. I think brands should care about their branding because, you know, it's a more personality side of just the product or service you're offering. But let's say you don't care, and then you don't care that like each video is more of like a standalone video than a more cohesive overall story, then I guess sure, go for it. I mean, obviously my opinion is that that's not the best approach, but yeah, I guess there are situations if you have a very particular direction you're going in where it could work. Yeah. Anyways, moving on. Now to jump into all the different resources and videos and talks and stuff that I've came across that are on the topic of virality. I will also say this is not an extensive list. I didn't like spend days just trying to find every video that talks about virality. This is just things that I've come across in my just being on social media and thinking about this topic. So the first one is from the Think Media podcast, which I will say, love that podcast. I think they're great. They give a lot of amazing tips. Obviously, have been doing that way longer than I have, so who am I to say that they're doing it well? But so they recently had Adley on, who's the founder of Viralish, and she was talking about different ways they make content go viral because that's what they focus on. So one of them was, it was something about, basically I think they wrote a compliment or something, and then she would like pull up her shirt and it would be a compliment or whatever underneath, but it would be filmed from the back, so you couldn't see, you watching the video, you couldn't actually see what was happening. Or I know that once like she was talking about like either dropping eggs on the floor, or she was doing something while telling a story that were like two completely different things. So why I'm bringing that up is obviously that is a way to grab somebody's attention, and obviously it works for them and that's their main goal. But then my question is, as a brand, does it make sense for you to go and do that? Because I mean, if it does make sense, I guess go and do it. It's just that maybe it's my personal opinion that really comes through to here too much, which is I don't think that's my necessarily preferred way of doing it. I can see for some brands how it has time and place. It's just that I'm not sure generally that's the most applicable, but I guess I might be wrong. I don't know. If somebody has an opinion about it, please do tell me in the comments, because obviously, like I said, none of this is set in stone and it's always subject to change. So yeah, it's just, I guess I would like this to be more of a conversation as well anyways than just me talking at the camera. And all that to say is, I'm not saying go against it, shoot yourself in the foot, or don't do anything to reach bigger audiences. I mean, at the end of the day, this video is probably gonna have a quick clickbaity title. So it's just, I think I've mentioned it before, where it's finding what works for you and your strategy, how it can all be incorporated to make sense, instead of just choosing that as your only way to go about things, and that thing being trying to go viral. I will say another piece of content that I guess is kind of contrasting this opinion that I really, really liked was from Sam. The lighting will be changing in this video so badly because the sun is going behind and coming out of the clouds. That's gonna be fun to edit. Anyways, so Sam was saying how nowadays all the brands are just screaming into the void because there's so many brands on social media, which I agree with, but also that doesn't mean brands shouldn't be on social media just because everybody else is also there and screaming into the void, as she put it. But what she's saying is, and what we're seeing with Refi and stuff, is she's arguing that the smartest brands are now going for like DMs, closed group chats, because they realize that intimacy scales better than noise. And I do agree with that. And I think this is definitely a point against trying to just go viral and trying to reach as many people as you can. It's trying to reach your people. It's trying to reach people that actually want to buy from your brand or get your service or whatever it is. She calls it private virality, meaning when a viewer, customer, or whatever, a person on social media shares and forwards the content, which I think comes back into what I was talking in the last episode of how Instagram now is favoriting shares and forwards much more than they are likes and comments. And I think that's also true for TikTok as well. So this is all now like becoming a bit of a, loop. She also does point out that because it's DMs, it's shares, it's saved, that's kind of harder for brands to really keep track of the same way they can of likes and views and stuff. But the way they are going to see the impact of it is in the revenue and in the sales. And then again, going back to the call with Michael, who's ex-Ryanair head of social media, where he was talking about social media strategy, he mentioned how a brand sleep or die. now has a Substack that they have a paywall where customers can go and subscribe for more content from them. And that goes more into that side of creating an actual community instead of trying to reach as many people as you can for the sake of reaching as many people as you can, instead of, and not being sure how that's going to translate into your sales and community and stuff. And I think that goes more into, I guess, my also preferred way of trying to build your social media, which is creating that community and actually engaged audience and people that want to interact with you, that are there before you and want to support your brand or are a fan of a brand, instead of just trying to reach as many people as you can and then hoping that some of them convert, but not actually having as much grasp on them and understanding of who they are. I mean, yes, you can look at the analytics, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is when you have a community and when you nurture that community, I think you have a much better understanding of what your customer is and what they want. So going to another thing that I've came across from Pretty Little Marketer. Okay, so there were 2 pieces of content. One of them was an ad, so like let's take that with a grain of salt. But what she was saying is that virality doesn't have the impact we think it does. Because it's like I've already said, we see it, but do we buy from it? Is that your target audience? And then another piece of her content that was strictly talking about going viral and was not an ad. She had a stat that apparently 83% of Gen Z can tell when a brand is trying to go viral, and that makes them not want to buy from the brand. So then, especially if your target audience is Gen Z, trying to go viral might even hurt you. I mean, for me, it's kind of like, because I work in social media, I can't really tell how much other people can necessarily tell of them. How do I say this? Basically, sometimes I feel like because I work in social media, I can tell when a brand is trying to do something, but like not outright say that they're doing it, in the case of like maybe trying to go viral. And I can't be fully sure how much other people can tell as well. But I will say, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, probably quite a few millennials as well, we're all very much aware of what goes on social media. It can be very apparent. It doesn't matter that I'm a social media manager. It goes beyond just that. We're all so attuned to what goes on social media that people can tell. And well, I mean, there's this stat, but it's just my personal feeling as well, that is very, very evident. And I would question then, how does that reflect on your brand as well? Again, it's all going back to the balance. There is time and place to like try and jump on trends. There's time and place maybe to even try and go viral. I just think it needs to be done in the way where you make sure that it doesn't reflect badly on your brand, especially if you're going with, if 83% of Gen Z can tell when a brand is trying to go viral and that makes them not want to buy from a brand, that really puts into question of should you be doing it, and if you are doing it, you need to find a way to go about it where it's not cringe, where it's not creates that like feeling of, oh, I don't like this, I don't want to buy from them. Which, I mean, this honestly 83% sounds very high. I will say I don't want this stat to like frighten people or brands to like never try and go viral. My assumption would be, with not having read that research or where that stat came from, that it's more about not using virality as your main tactic, or I guess strategy in that case. So yeah, that was just a little tidbit. And then I do want to refer back to Michael's talk just for a bit again. Biggest takeaway I got from it, and I felt so validated in that moment, not gonna lie, when he said there's no one right way to do social media, and how it very much depends on each brand, and it also very much depends on the overall marketing strategy. So you first look at the overall marketing strategy, you understand where social media would come in there. So is it raising brand awareness? Is it conversions? Is it just supporting your communications? What is it? How does it fit in there? And I think that was, I would never feel brave enough to say that, but again, he has so much more experience than I do. He said how some brands might not even need organic content. Some brands might need only paid. Some brands might need only to work with creators. It really all depends. Even though I do believe they're different, like not every brand needs the same strategy, I don't think I would have ever dared to go that far to be like, some brands don't even need organic. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is, this is where I think the virality topic comes back into it, where it can be a part of your strategy. It cannot be your whole strategy because it's not a strategy, but it just needs to have a purpose. You need to know why you would want to go viral, right? So if it makes sense in the overall strategy, disregard what I'm saying. It might be working for you. It's just that you need to have a reason, not just I want to go viral, which quite a few brands might be suffering from. And then to move on to the last part of this episode, let's hear from the community, as this podcast is quite still in the early days. I don't have enough people to write in to discuss and talk about what they were writing in, even though I would love that. I feel like that would be such a cool thing to like actually get to interact with people and like read out what they have to say. But then let's look at another community, which is Reddit. I just took a look at a few different Reddit posts regarding going viral. So we have the first one, which is from r/social media. Spoiler alert, going viral on social media is not what you think it is. So this is under the professional discussion, and it says, I want to share a truth that many people don't seem to talk about. These days, it feels like everyone is chasing the viral moment, crafting their posts, videos, and content entirely around what will get the most engagement. But as someone who has gone viral dozens of times on social media, most recently having a video appear on ESPN and multiple sports outlets, gaining millions of views, I'm here to tell you, going viral is not life-changing. Sure, it's a wild ride in the moment, the dopamine rush is real, the likes, comments, and views pour in, and it feels like the world is paying attention. But there's the thing, they're not. Once that temporary excitement wears off, you're back to reality, back to your normal life. The truth is, going viral doesn't mean people suddenly know who you are, it doesn't change your financial situation, it doesn't boost your status. You're still you, life goes on as usual. It's a fleeting moment, not a ticket to overnight success or fame. I'm sharing this because I see so many creators basing their entire strategy around going viral, thinking it's the holy grail of success. I get it. We all want recognition, but don't want to get caught up in thinking virality is the end game. It's not. Focus on building something sustainable, on creating content that's meaningful to you, and not just what you think will blow up. Just my perspective from someone who's been there and seen both sides. What do you think? So obviously this is more if you're a creator than a business, but I think it's still applicable both ways. And I think that's a really good point, and like it's great to hear from somebody that actually has had multiple videos reach millions of views being like, nothing changed that much. Because if you think about it, if we go to creator side, if you think about Tube Girl, I mean, she still has a following. That's not a question. She's still working with brands and all that. It's just that one moment everyone knew about her, and now because I didn't follow her and she was never too much part of my feed. I haven't seen any of her videos in ages. I know that at one point she went to a Paris Fashion Week or something, but that's the last thing I remember, and I think it's been probably a year. So I think it's also different for creators and brands. Through that, she built a following. I'm assuming this person also built a following through their videos going viral. But as brands, it's more like that constant being on top of people's minds. And that doesn't mean all the people, just people that you want to be on top of their mind. So yeah, I would say that. Okay, so let's look at some comments. A person agrees basically with the take, and I mean, to be fair, I can say that I'm not biased, and everything, like obviously everything that I'm talking about in this podcast is leaning more towards, yes, going viral is fine, but like, why do you want to do it? But anyways, to read the comment is, I agree that going viral can be exciting, but it doesn't last. So focusing on creating meaningful content that brings long-term value is much more important than choosing short-term fame. And I agree with that so much. I've mentioned this throughout the episode many times, but I do want to make it abundantly clear. Showing up on social media as your brand and having consistency, building a community, I think will bring you so much more of what you want through just like that 1 or 2 viral videos than just going viral once or twice. Building the actual core customer base around yourself. So I'll move on to the next post I found. Okay, so the next point, which is a bit more of a discussion on virality, it's from r/marketing, titled, What's the point of going viral? It says, obviously there's a randomness to going viral. Although you can increase the likelihood of it happening, it's not predictable. During the times that some of Signal Zen's marketing has gone viral and other friends have confirmed similar, it seems there's a tiny net result in the customer growth. Is going viral on any platform even worth focusing on? Somebody says, in general, going viral should never be the objective. And then someone says, focusing on going viral is just management speak for refusing to budget for paid social. In reality, it isn't a strategy, it's just a nice thing you hope happens that you can never be held accountable for because you cannot control it. And I do agree with this point so much. I mean, the paid, I think it's funny that they think that it's management speak for like, we don't want to have a budget for paid. But I've been saying that throughout the whole episode. It isn't a strategy. It's a nice thing that you can hope happens. And that's a thing that I guess I didn't mention. Like, it's still, there are things you can do to influence going viral, but at the end of the day, there is like a certain part of it just of being luck, and you can just hope that you go viral, but you can't count on it. Okay, somebody's slightly opposing you to mine, maybe. Depends on the nature of your virality. If you're a B2B, you post a funny cat video and it goes viral, you get nothing. But then again, that's like so far off. But okay, I obviously agree with that. If you post a topic related video and it goes viral, you attract a lot of new unnurtured audience that you could sell to down the road, which I agree. It's just that I don't know, I feel like you need to get the topic right, obviously. Like if that happens and you reach the right audience, then my point of you're reaching a lot of people but you're not sure you're their core audience, I guess then at that point that's no longer true, because if you have a topic that reaches the right people and it's all connected, then yeah, it makes sense and you could sell to them down the road. Okay, and a comment that I really, really like. So they're saying, worth focusing on? No. Worth optimizing for? Of course. For most growing accounts, a large percentage of views/followers will come from a small percentage of content, kind of like 80 to 20 principle. The idea is to create on-brand content that is super relevant for your target audience, and that's my main point. Optimize for it and create content for your brand, for your target audience, and is optimized to increase its potential virality. That way, anything that does go viral will be reaching the right people for the right reasons. I didn't think I've articulated it this well, but that is the point. You can use it as a tactic to reach the right people. It's just that like that cannot be the main objective. It's, you know, setting things up that if it goes viral, you reach the right people. And then they go on to say, for example, Reels tend to get more impressions than other posts on Facebook and Instagram, so publishing at least a few Reels a week makes sense. That gives you the best chance of reaching a larger audience, which increases your chance of gaining new followers, leads, customers, and improves brand awareness. At this point, obviously, completely agree. There's literally nothing else I could say on it, but I will say I think that stems quite a bit away from what I was talking about when I was talking about virality, because this is now going into like platforms and like the content hubs that work for them. I was more talking about maybe the thinking behind the video that you're creating, but obviously completely agree with that part. And then the last Reddit post that I wanted to talk about today, which is coming from r/digital marketing, titled Controversial Thoughts. Virality doesn't mean sales. And it's a question. So they're saying, I'm thinking about the impact of viral content on actual business growth. From my experience, especially with viral PR campaigns before I became a CEO, I've noticed that viral content can definitely drive a massive amount of traffic to your site. If the content is relevant to the audience, you might see a temporary increase in sales. Unfortunately, this spike is often just that, a short-term splash. The high bounce rate shows that many visitors are just browsing and not genuinely interested. Once the hype dies down, it's back to square one. Viral content doesn't seem to lead to sustainable sales growth. To clarify my perspective, I've reached out to the person behind this year's most viral post on LinkedIn to see if his experience aligns with mine. Looking forward to hearing his thoughts and insights. Okay, it would have been fun if they already responded. Hi, while I'm waiting, what's your thoughts? Have you seen viral content lead to sustained sales growth? Maybe you have done successful viral campaigns that turned into massive flow of leads. And that's, I mean, it's great to hear that perspective, because it's somebody saying, we've done it, it happened to us. It's just that the same way you can see the short-term impact on social media when it comes to having your content go viral, the same, I guess, applies to sales, which I would assume so. It's just like it's great to actually hear that somebody says that that's what happened to them. I mean, not that their sales went down. Obviously, that's not a good thing. It's just that it more so confirms my theory that virality is not necessarily the most optimal way to go about things. And then we have another person in the comments saying, well, it does drive a lot of traffic, but it often doesn't translate into long-term sales growth. Sure, you might see a temporary spike, but many visitors are just browsing. And once the hype fades, things go back to normal. You're spot on. Somebody else says along the same lines, user intent psychology needs to be at play. Anyone can make noise and wave their hands around. That doesn't equate to sales and ongoing sales. That comes from a clear business model. From what I can tell in this post, like most people are agreeing with it, saying similar things. But yeah, to wrap this whole thing up is just coming back to the question of why do you want to go viral? What does that serve you? And obviously my personal opinion being understand who your customer or target audience is and create a clear brand around that, using virality as a tactic possibly here and there, but not as your main way you approach social media. But obviously you could totally disagree with me, so I would love to hear if somebody else has a different opinion to me, or if you do actually have examples of your content going viral, what were the end results afterwards? If you're a brand, did you see a surge in sales for short term or long term it actually worked for you? Or if you're a creator, did that translate into you actually being able to grow an audience that truly, you can tell that you're truly connecting with them? Would love to hear your thoughts on that. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening to another episode of Subject to Change. Okay, bye!